Hello all. In the Sunday evening, older youth, we were talking about going deeper in our relationship with God and what that looked like. Practical tips, encouragement to do so, um, self-reflection at where we are, next steps we need to take, and just that general challenge to go deeper in our relationship with Him. And so I was reading Mark and the story about blind Bartimaeus. Just stood out for me, and I thought it blended quite nice with this. So I'll read it out to you. It's Mark 10:46-52. Then they reached Jericho, and as Jesus and his disciples left town, a large crowd followed him. A blind beggar named Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, was sitting beside the road. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." "Be quiet," many people yelled at him, but he only shouted louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, "Tell him to come here." So they called the blind man. "Cheer up," they said. "Come on, he's calling you." Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, he jumped up and he came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked. "My Rabboni," the blind man said, "I want to see." And Jesus said to him, "Go, for your faith has healed you." Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. So one of the first things I did once doing that was I looked at the meaning of Bartimaeus, and it actually means son of uncleanliness. I thought that sometimes in our lives we can feel too unworthy, too dirty, that we become blind to the overwhelming love that God has for each one of us. We become blind to that greater place of intimacy that He is calling us to. And this causes us to just be passive in our faith, to sit beside the road, not coming, embracing that place where He has called us to. And it just, therefore, just keeps this ongoing state of blindness to what God is calling us to. So what can we learn from Bartimaeus if we are stuck in this place of passiveness, of not fully embracing what God has called us to, if we feel too unworthy, too dirty? Well, when he heard Jesus was nearby, which he is with all of us, even though he was burdened and his identity was said, "You are too unclean, you are too dirty," he still called out for God. Even though he was blind, he was a social outcast, he still called out for God. Even when he was rebuked by people for his faith, he still called out for God, and it said he did so even louder. He shouted even louder for it. So first thing, don't let anything tell you that you can't call out for God. In Psalm 55:22, it says, "Cast your cares on the Lord and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." So take that promise and cast every care onto Him. Let Him be your firm foundation. Let Him be your 999 in emergency, your first port of call, and even in joyous occasions, let Him be the first person you tell about. But even when we do, sometimes, when we do cast our cares onto Him, when we give these cries for help of, "Son of David, have mercy on me," like Bartimaeus, we might not get an immediate response, but may I encourage you with how Jesus responds. Even though it might feel we are talking to a blank wall, look how Jesus responds. He heard, He stopped, and He spoke. So He heard, even though He didn't get this immediate response, He heard these cries for help, that your cries aren't going unheard, that He is listening to you. He stopped. He paused. He didn't reply immediately, but He actually allowed for His faith to be tested. He allowed for them to rebuke Him. He allowed for this consistency to be constantly saying, "Yes, Lord, have mercy on me," constantly crying out to Him. So He allowed it. He allowed for His faith to be tested, which creates endurance. And then He spoke, so we can have confidence, even though He might stop, even though we might not get that immediate response. We can have confidence that He will speak just at His right time, for He knows the best right time, even though it might not seem like it for us. But the coolest thing is what actually Jesus says. He says, "Tell him to come here." Because of Bartimaeus' distance, he wouldn't have heard Jesus' response, so he had to tell others to tell Bartimaeus to come here. I was thinking about this and I thought about when Mom's downstairs and she's like, Aaron. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? But she can't hear me because she's downstairs and I'm upstairs. But it's not until she actually comes into my room when she said, Aaron, I say, yeah, what's up? That she said, you can actually hear my response. So second thing, come to this greater place of intimacy. We are called to this greater place of intimacy. If you feel like you're just speaking to a blank wall, we are called to this greater place of intimacy where we're able to hear more clearly what Jesus is saying to us. And knowing that we are called to this greater place of intimacy, we can do one of two things. We can just continue to sit in this state of passiveness, of not doing much, not embracing where God has called us to, where there's not much growth in our spiritual life or our physical, like knock-on effects on physical life. Or we can take a leaf out of Bartimaeus' approach. Was it a page, book? I don't know. What can we learn? So once hearing these instructions to come closer, he threw aside his coat, he jumped up and he came to Jesus. He threw aside his coat, he got rid of any immediate hindrances stopping him from coming to Jesus. He jumped up, there was no lingering. He fully embraced the place where he was coming to. He was expectant that there was going to be difference made in his life. Then he came to Jesus. He was intentional in the direction in which he was going. And so we should too. If we are feeling we are called, let's take a leaf out of Bartimaeus. You can either stay passive or you can throw aside your coat. You can jump up and come to Jesus. Come to this greater place of intimacy, which we are all called to come to. Then Bartimaeus once he was beside Jesus, that is where he could hear the response of Jesus clearly. That is where he found healing that he could see. That is where he also embraced the alternative meaning of his name, for his name just doesn't mean son of uncleanliness, it also means son of honor. And the cool thing is, it doesn't stop there. His journey doesn't stop there, for he followed Jesus down the road. His journey continues where he was following Jesus down the road. He was broken when he came to Jesus. But in Jesus, in that greater place of intimacy, he started to find healing. Sometimes we can feel like a son or daughter of uncleanliness, but that's not true. We are all sons and daughters of honor. He's made a place for us. He wants our attention. He wants to spend time with us. He wants to listen. And we're all called to this greater place of intimacy. For when we arrive at this greater place of intimacy, that is where we find freedom. That's where we find new life. That is where we find new worth. That is where we find healing. That is where we find a new love just overpouring out of us. It's only in Christ. It's only in this greater place of intimacy we can experience it in a capacity we can never do just by sitting beside the road being passive. It's only when we come to this greater place of intimacy where we follow Jesus just down the road that we can appreciate it in a greater capacity than we could otherwise. So my challenge is to you. If you feel your Bartimaeus nearby, if you feel your Bartimaeus being called, if you feel your Bartimaeus beside, your journey isn't done. There's a natural progression just to come. And may I encourage you to step out of where you're at and follow Jesus down the road to where he is leading you.